Okay, I want to make a quick video on the baits and the lures that we use when we're in the sleeper cabins. I've been getting some questions about that. And you know, the videos that I put out, I try to put this in the description, but they are the sleeper cabins are usually a year ago. So when you're seeing it, that's from our last year's vacation. What I can do though is to give you the updates of what I've caught recently, and just in general as we look around the lake and the times of year that I've been there, I can tell you what we've been catching them on. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through the different locations that I've been at. Whenever I'm talking about lower in the bowl, I'm talking about, you know, across 4 Mile Bay, over Pine Island, and then that bowl on the, obviously the US side. And the places that I've been there in that lower bowl area would be Sportsman Sleepers and Sean's Birchwood Resort, Sean's Sleepers. So those would be the two that I've been at in lower in the bowl. When I've talked about Dale's is, if you look at Rocky Point, and I believe it might be called Long Point, or maybe it's Twin Islands or something, right, that whole area and up is where Dale has his road and where he moves his houses around. And then the last location that I just got back from a week ago would be Musket Bay, and outside of War Road. I went through Kruger's there, and I'll let you know what we were catching them on there as well. And so I'll be going through all my lures, and one thing I guess I recommend is you bring up a little bit of everything you have. The last thing would be the bait. If you're buying bait up there, you know, every year it's different depending on, you know, what they have available, but in general what you're going to find at either Steve's Lucky Baits or Outdoors Again is you're going to find rainbows, you're going to find fatheads, you're going to have frozen shiners, and the frozen shiners are the shiners that are native to the lake that run up the Rainy River in the fall. And you will get shiners like golden shiners or sucker minnows. And they don't always have the golden shiners or those bigger shiners, but they'll also have sucker minnows. And so those are the different baits. We either get we get both fatheads and rainbows when we go up there, and we'll use both of those. What I will say is, if you get the rainbows, you want to have a bait bucket with a lid on it, because those things, they're always jumping, and they'll be jumping right out of your 5-gallon pail if that's what you have. The sucker minnows or the big shiners are things that we will use a lot of times in the early morning or in the evenings or overnights on rattle reels, and that's for those the suspended fish that are coming through. So we're pulling that way off the bottom, you know, 5-10 feet, maybe even 15 feet if you're in 30 feet of water, and you're letting those bigger fish go after the bigger baits. And then with the frozen shiners, those are the ones that we're typically using just the heads or even the tails as on a jigging bait or a little rattle bait or something like that. And again, you just never know what they're going to be biting on. This last time when we were up at Kruger's, we found that the majority of, you know, the jigging it had to have something on it. They weren't interested in jigging wraps or different things like that if there wasn't any minnow head on there. So either a buckshot rattle or a Lindy flyer with a minnow head on there, that's what they were going after. But let's look at the lures. Okay, let's take a quick walk around the tackle. This is my jigging wrap mainly box. I also have some rattle baits, which honestly I don't use much other than just to try to call in fish when the fishing is a little bit dead. But otherwise, you know, I've got gold. I've got I think it's called the Purple Descent. Not something I typically get much action on in Lake of the Woods. Also the Tiki Minnow, which is something I just added this year. And a friend of mine, as we were up last week, he dropped down with the Tiki Minnow and got a somewhere around a 17-inch walleye right away, but nothing else the rest of the week. The one that I would say has got me the most luck in Lake of the Woods is this gold jigging wrap, and that has mainly been lower in the bowl. So you'll hear me say this often, that lower in the bowl I tend to go with gold more. So that would be the jigging wrap box. Now we've got the chubby darters and the slab wraps, shad wraps in there. And so, I don't know what to say as far as, typically I've gone small with these. And that may be something where I just need to be a little bit more adventurous and try something a little bit bigger. Again, rattling is something that it's not always about just what you're catching on the rattle, but what you're bringing in that will eventually go over to your dead stick. So often I will use those just to, if I can get chasers, great, but even better if they chase that and then they head over to the dead stick and take it, then it's a fish caught and it's a team effort. So I'll go with that. Now this is my box. I have a lot of like buckshot glider glow redfish. This is the first thing I start out with no matter what location I'm at, with this and either the head of a minnow or a whole minnow. And it's the, that red glow on this side, and that'll be on my jigging setup. And so I'll be trying to get things off the bottom with that. But of course, what else you'll see in here is a lot of the foraging minnow, macho minnow, the stop signs, which are kind of famous out in Lake of the Woods, just some gold slender spoons, the Swedish pimples, and then a couple of Tom's tackle on the back for dead sticks. Now, out of these, what I would say is the stop signs I have used quite a bit on Lake of the Woods, but what color is something that changes quite often. So typically what I have been going with for a stop sign, this is my small baits box, was the small stop sign. Where to go here? This very small pink stop sign, gold on the backside, that's probably brought me the most action on Lake of the Woods. I'm usually at Dale's at the end of January and going into February. So it's a little bit later in the year, and I think smaller presentations are typically doing better at that time. Now, just last week, I was up at Muskeg Bay, and this stop sign, which is quite a bit bigger, pink and glow, or pink and white, with gold and a little rattle on the back, did quite well. And so we were getting a lot of walleyes, lots of stuff around 16 inches or so off that bait. Again, that's a little bit earlier in the year. It was just after Christmas and up to New Year's. And so I think it's just good to have a good variety of those and then switch them up depending on what you're getting. When I was talking about that Swedish pimple, just that standard Swedish pimple, both lower in the bowl and at Dale's, I've had good luck. That gold, it's kind of a heavier jig, so it gets down there really quick, tipped with a minnow head and glow on one side. That's done well. But again, I'm not pushing a certain one. What I'm saying is you want to have a variety in your box. If I'm up at Rocky Point at Dale's place, I'm probably going to go with stuff that's more pink, red, and glow. If I'm down in the bowl, I'm probably going to go with more stuff that has gold on it, at least on one side. And that's just kind of a generalization. But again, I will mix it up depending on what's biting. Heading over to my small Tom's tackle box here. This defrost, I talk about it every time. If I was left on Lake of the Woods for the winter and I had to feed myself and I had two lures, I would take the defrost and I would take the buckshot glider red glowfish anytime. Those would be the top two. Now, that doesn't mean they always produce, but that's what I would be going with. This defrost, every time that I start with that on my dead stick, and many times it never leaves because I'm always catching fish. Now, along with the defrost would be the pink charmer, and they have varieties of these pink charmers now. They got the pink and gold, the glow, or the pink glow and gold, and I believe they also have them with little buckshots or little rattles in them. And what I would say is I love these for jigging. I love them with just a jig head on. You can also use them in your dead stick, and I've had a lot of luck both ways. So normally if you're getting stuff off the defrost, I'm getting stuff on this pink charmer as well. And one thing with the same color presentation that's nice is sometimes I'm missing fish on the defrost, and I would say that that's likely because it's a one hook setup. So to have a treble hook on a similar presentation, similar colors, I really like. And so often, you know, if I am missing fish, I'll put this down there on my dead stick to try to help out. These VMC Tingler spoons, the either pink kind of fire tiger there, or the perch fire tiger, or the perch. I think those are spoons that have worked well on Lake of the Woods, either fluttering with like a tail or just the head of a minnow, or just using it on your dead stick with a live minnow. These guys, these rattle baits, these big ones, I have never got anything to bite on those, either Lake of the Woods, anywhere. And I've used them quite a few times. Mille Lacs Lake. Those apparently only work in Lake Winnipeg. Sadly, I spent, I believe it must have been $16 on each of those. So thank you, Aaron. These guys are just summer jigs, and they're really small summer jigs. And why would I have summer jigs and bring them ice fishing? Because last year somebody was fishing with just a small pink summer jig, just like this, and they got 2 walleyes right around 28 inches. So they're from California. They didn't even know what to fish with. That's what they threw down, and that's what they got. So you really just never know, and that's why I say bring a little bit of everything that you have, and that way, as you're working things and you're finding, okay, I'm getting chasers on this, you can switch things up. In the early part of the year, in the lower part of the bowl, that's when we're usually down there. The gold stuff has worked the best for me, and this one, I don't even know the name of this, but it's a double bladed. It's got hammered gold on one side. It's got this blade on the other that's pink, and then there's got the wings on the top and the bottom. That hit did quite well for now 3 years in a row, both lower in the bowl and when we were at Muskeg Bay. Now lower in the bowl, I think I mentioned this jigging wrap, this gold jigging wrap has done well. And talking about sunny days, this PK spoon lower in the bowl on sunny days, I've always had a lot of luck on. Again, these are jigging. This is with the head of a minnow on that, or the tail, and just bouncing it on the bottom, making a little bit of noise, trying to get something to follow, and bringing it up and then setting that hook. Some new guy this year, these little eyeball spoons, and they're not new, but they're new to me. It would be this guy right here, a little bit bigger than the one I just had on. And my son, Holden, was just one after another getting fish on that guy. So very happy with that guy. I'm going to be happy to try that at Dale's. Also at Muskeg Bay, my buddy was using a Lindy flyer with the gold back, the red on the front, but again, the gold back. It was not the glow. And that I would say between that, the double-bladed, and the eyeball were probably the hottest baits, and that pink stop sign. I think I already showed you that one. At Dale's, I'm going to say almost every time, the pink charmers and the Tom's Tackle defrost for sure, along with this northern tackle and or the Lindy flyer, red on the one side and glow on the other. Other than that, I would just say, again, bring everything and try things out. The last thing I want to talk about is the setup. I don't know if you can see that, but that clip down there and the barrel swivel. I buy the clips and the barrel swivels. So here's an example of the barrel swivels I use. Here's an example of the clips that I use. What I do is I just go ahead and put this together and make this ahead of time. This way, this clip is much easier for my fingers to work. I've seen these quick clips before that are quite small, and my fingers it's impossible for me to get things in and out of those. So I go ahead and make my own little setup, and I've never noticed that it's made any difference between tying a jig directly to the line or having this set up at Lake of the Woods. I believe that the water is so dirty that it just doesn't matter. And then, of course, you can see right there, that is my braided line to floral knot. I think they might call it an FG knot. And I really like that because it just goes through the guides really easy, and you don't notice it unless you're putting things away. But then you don't have to have a lot of loose slack on your line by having a barrel swivel up high or something like that. So that's typically the setup that I use. The only other setup that we would be using, or that I would be using, would just be the plain hook. And you know, you got to make sure to bring those because you just never know. Sometimes you find that if you are putting down just a plain hook, whether it's a hook like this, whether it's a red hook, whether it's a gold hook, you know, it's good to have variety. You just never know what will be working, and you know, that's kind of the mystery of the first day that you're there, right? Is you're trying to figure out what are they biting on, and changing things around, and then having things ready. I like to have probably 3 jigging rods set up with different things, so that if I'm getting a chaser but he's not biting, I can reel up and drop something else down and try to kind of hone in on what they're biting on. You know, the one thing I'll say about a rattle reel or going overnight, it's kind of a debate for me of whether or not I want to use something that just has one hook or a treble. And the reason is, if you're anywhere close to the bottom, you have a high probability of getting a burbot. And if I get a burbot, I don't want a treble on it. I want a single hook. I might have to cut that line. I'd like the fish to be able to spit it. And I really don't want to be digging down the throat of a burbot. They're pretty hard to handle sometimes to get those lures out. But if I'm getting everything suspended, and especially if I've lost any fish, which last week at Kruger's we lost a few in the evening or overnight on the rattle reels, I am probably going to want trebles, because that's haunting to go to sleep after knowing you had something sizable that came in at 2 a.m. that was suspended, and you missed it, you know, just because you didn't get enough hook set, or one hook wasn't enough. So I hope this helps. I hope you know, just kind of briefly going over the lures that I have helps. I noticed as I was looking through my tackle, I don't have all my tackle out, so you know, unfortunately I didn't show you everything just because I'm a little bit I'm still kind of cleaning up after my last trip. So thank you for your questions and comments, and please keep them coming.